What's up, and welcome to episode 268 of First Geek 411. I'm your host, Cameron Franklin, and with me, as always, from the Great White North, Shanine. How are you doing?
Doing good.
We are getting spammed in chat by someone named Not So Foreign. I'm going to need a mod to ban them. They're clearly not a real person. Um, I hope you're doing well, Chris. Miss you a bunch. Um, but yeah, this week we are chatting Daggerheart Open Beta Review. Shannon and I have both played the system from Darrington Press, the people from Critical Role, and are really excited to chat about it. Chris, I can ban myself. Teach yourself a lesson. Um, and so, yeah, I'm really excited for us to talk about this. We have some um, overlapping experience with the system, but I'm really excited for us to get into like our general thoughts and stuff like that on the system. We have gotten a question from Sneaky that he posted in our Discord, so we have that in our notes as well. And then if there's anyone else watching that does have any questions, please let us know. If you're watching live, either on Twitch or on YouTube, we can add those to the notes and talk about them when we get there. Or if you're watching later on YouTube, I will hopefully come back and answer you in the comments. And so, but yeah, so with that, let's get into who we are. Of course, as First Geek 411, you can find us around our social medias. Join that Discord server. Shoot us an email at 1stgeek411@gmail.com. Watch live on Twitch and YouTube Monday nights around 6:45 Mountain Time. And you can find our merch on that Redbubble store. Before we get into our main topic, Shanine, what have you been up to this past week?
Um, well, expanding this past week to this
Past
nebulous
indiscriminate time
out
period.
time, I have been watching the Scream franchise. I have just the newest one left to watch, and I don't know, this might dethrone Halloween. I'm not sure, but I am enjoying it. Um, I don't find it scary at all. Um, it's got like the occasional good jump scare, um, and just fun twists. I gasped so loud at one of the twists. Again, they're probably not that big of twists if you're like trying to figure it out, but I'm just here for a good time.
You're just
But
vibing.
one of the twists shook me so good that my husband heard me from all the way upstairs. um, so it's good. It's a good time.
Nice.
Um, Other than that, me and my husband also went to Evo 2024. Um, I knew basically nothing going in. This was a fighting game convention, and my husband is very into those kinds of things, and I was once again just there for the vibes and the good times. Um, and honestly, the vibes there are so good. Who would have thought that the fighting game community is so nice and so supportive, and
I
they're
love
all
that
just
for
there
you.
for a good time too. We watched some finals and things, and it's great. It looks like everybody's up there just like best friends having a good time. Like, oh man, you just pulled off a crazy move. Did you beat me? Yes. Am I mad about it?
A little,
A
but
little, but I'm also impressed. Like, everyone's just having a good time, and it's great. Um, yeah, it was super cool. There was like lots of people in cosplay and stuff, which was very fun. Um, there was so many crazy booths. Like the Mortal Kombat booth legit had like a Japanese pagoda and cherry blossoms set up in the middle of this hall. Like it was wild. They had a ton of classic arcade setups. Like, we didn't play any, but we walked through and there was like good old like DDR. I don't even know those like Donkey Kong bongo games.
Okay.
Um, and yeah, just like rows and rows and rows and rows and rows of these old arcade games. Um, they had an area set up. They're releasing a bunch of Marvel vs. Capcom games that have previously not been available on consoles and things. And they like finally listened to the fans and are releasing them. So we got to play like uh, the demo for that. And then we also got to be some of the first people in the world to play 2XKO, which is the League of Legends fighting game that will be coming out. I don't
Sometime.
know, whenever it comes out. Um, so yeah, that was kind of wild to play that before it's like released and stuff. And me and Travis won. So,
Nice. What character did you play as?
uh,
Okay.
where's the thing? I can't remember. But they also handed out like these little pamphlets of like listing all the characters and their abilities and like all the buttons on all the different controllers and things, like while you were waiting in line. So for people who like actually know about those things, you can look through it and like, yeah, decide. I just picked a character based on looks and what seemed easiest to play.
See, it's a very reasonable way to play fighting games. So,
Yes.
important question for you. Um, in a event all about fighting games, PlayStation also had an important demo, and that was Astrobot. Did you, by any chance, get to play Astrobot?
We didn't. We could have, but no, we're busy with other stuff. The PlayStation did have a super cute booth with lots of little astrobots all over the place. No, we didn't play it.
I was super jealous when I heard that it was there. And you can possibly attest to this. Apparently, it was like mislabeled. Like, it was labeled as like Astro's Playroom. Um, but it was actually like the new Astrobot game, and so like a bunch of people didn't know it was like didn't even go by the booth because they thought it was the like older game, not the newer one. Like, well done, PlayStation. But
It's a very real possibility. I don't know. I was just following my husband around, and so we saw it. And that's as far as we went with that one. Um, yeah, and then we watched the finals for Street Fighter 3, Third Strike. Um, it was pretty wild. There was a Canadian in it, so we were rooting for him. He did not make it to like the finals, but he did pretty good, so that was exciting. And then apparently a super crazy moment happened. So people who are fans in the fighting game community and have been like going to Evo for years and years, there was like the moment 37, I think it is, from like 15 years ago or something like that, where uh, Daigo was playing against Justin Wong, um, is Ken and Chun Li.
mm-hmm.
And apparently, Chun Li's super is like 15 kicks in like just like really, really fast and some up in the air. And in order to parry, you need to parry if you don't want to take any damage, because if you're blocking, you still take chip damage. So you need to parry if you don't want to take any damage, and you have to hit it within like fractions of a second. And so Daigo parried every single one of the kicks, and everybody in the room went wild. People like have permanent hearing damage from it because of how crazy they went. So it's like this super iconic moment in Evo history. And then so in Street Fighter 3, same game, we were watching the finals. There was this guy whose name that I cannot remember anymore, but you can Google it and it'll come up. He was playing as Hugo, and even to me, who does not know fighting games, Hugo seemed like such a weird choice to be playing in the finals. Like he was just
I
like
need to
a very
Google.
low character. And see, now I can't even remember what character he was playing against either.
I've never seen this character before in my life. Like, by no
Yeah.
means a fighting game fan, but I know Kin and Chun-Li, and I have never heard of Hugo.
Yeah, so like obviously not like very popular and competitive player or anything like that. But yeah, so basically the Hugo character was down to like this much life, and the other person was like super gonna win. And then same thing, he like parried a bunch of stuff and came back to win that round, and everyone like lost their minds and was screaming, and I'm sitting there like, this is probably a lot cooler
If you know, yeah.
than it looked to someone who doesn't know what's going on. But it was cool to be there, and everyone was very excited. And this player didn't even win the finals. He got third, I think. But his was the name that everyone was chanting at the
The
end when
moment
they were
was
like
epic.
handing out the medals and stuff. And yeah,
That's
it
awesome.
was wild.
Yep. I'll say, like, as someone who does not keep up with fighting games, does not know anything, I know about the Chun-Li Kin thing. Of like, that's one of those moments that like gets brought up a lot, and like, it's kind of echoing what you just said. It's does not look impressive. It feels like, just because this is also where we are at the moment as a planet, it feels like the Olympics, where like you're watching these people and it's like, okay, cool, so they did this thing. I don't know, like, how hard is that? I haven't tried. Um, and like that's how stuff like that feels as an outsider. Of like, oh, they just you just parry all the kicks, yeah. Of like, with like the actual like, I feel like that's one of the challenges of like live events versus like watching online. Watching online, people can tell you like, okay, here's how crazy this is, but watching in person, it, like you get the hype of the moment, but you don't always get the context. um, any other fun Evo or Vegas stories?
Um, I feel like that was kind of it for Evo. Vegas was very, very hot. Um, we did get to see the fountains at the Bellagio,
Nice.
which was my goal.
Did you rob any of the casinos with an elaborate
No,
heist?
sadly, no. Next time.
Next time. Nice. I have never been to Vegas. Like, that's definitely, like, there's so much there that like convention wise and stuff like that, that like I definitely want to go and do some of that at some point. Um, and like GameStop, they had the store leaders conference there, and so like a bunch of people from corporate would go to help, and I always wanted to go to help, but I could never get on the list, and so I was like, well, fine. I'll stay here and do my job. And so, uh, but yeah, I'm excited for you. We were talking pre-show. I'm a little bitter that y'all were in the U.S. and didn't come visit again, even though as you brought up, I could have come to Vegas to see y'all, and we are also not like remotely close to each other, but like here we are. And so, um, and so, yeah, I'm so excited, and I'm glad it went well. I feel like that's always like, I don't know, like the stressful part about going to a con for something that you're not really into. Of like, am I gonna find like things that entertain me at this place that like you're not in that part of the gaming culture?
I feel like it was less stressful that way. It's like I didn't have to make it to anything on time. I was just I was just there to follow around, and that's it.
Nice.
I couldn't miss out on anything cuz I didn't care.
Because you don't know what anything is to miss out on. So nice. I'm so excited for you. On my end, past week's been pretty good. Went to my LGS and played Commander. And so it was my first time going to play at this place. I've been shopping there for a while. I played my Starscream deck. I ended up kind of getting hated out of the game. And like for the middle, like, or for like the last like 80% of the game, I didn't do anything. And everyone took themselves out. And then I managed to get the win at 1 health. And so it was like, well, I did nothing for like literally 4 turns and just like played a land. My spell got countered, played something, everything got blown up, all of that kind of stuff. And then come the final turn, I won at 1 life. And so got him. And then played another game with my Marin deck that just kind of got to do its thing. Somebody else became the main threat, and then I like drained everyone for like 60 life in 1 turn. And so I'm excited. Hopefully going back this week. We'll see. Also been playing more Zenless Zone Zero. I have finished the main story. I have 1 little side content of story left to do, and then the platinum is not that far away, with the problem being that I have to get characters to like max level, which means I have to get my like profile level to a certain place, which is very difficult once you finish the content. And so we might be putting the game down and waiting for another update before we go for that, just to make it more seamless to get to. In the realm of books, I have been continuing my walk or read through of the Lunar Chronicles. And so I finished Winter, which is the 4th book. Then today I started and finished Fairest, which is about the evil queen. And it's kind of like a prequel / like along the way story for the book series. And then I started Stars Above, which is similarly a bunch of side stories and then the epilogue to the series. And so almost done with all of Lunar Chronicles, and I will have completed that whole book series. And so pretty excited about that. And then lastly, we had Panda Boy over last night, and we watched the House of the Dragon finale. And so it was indeed a finale. And so we had a lot of fun. It's always great chatting, hanging out, watching that. Now we have to wait like 2 years for the 3rd season of this, but like it was really good. I have liked what they've done with the show. Have you seen House of the Dragon / Game of Thrones? Okay. I did not think you had, but I wasn't sure. But after Double D like erased Game of Thrones from the public conscience with the final season, it's been really good seeing how well like House of the Dragon has like brought it back, of like even amidst like a lot of the complaints that have still happened, because in our culture, you have to either 100% love something or 100% hate something. Like, you can't be in the middle. You can't just enjoy something. And so, even through all of that, like, the public reception has been so good, um, or so positively slanted, that it's been so nice to actually like want to care about this fandom again, which is something that I was not sure I would ever want to do again. And um, so that was really fun. I'm excited, like I said, for season 3. And then apparently there's like 7 Game of Thrones spin-offs in the works, which seems excessive. Like, um, especially with like we've also been watching some of like the behind the scenes, and they put so much work into this show that it's like I can't really imagine y'all keeping up that production with 7 shows. Apparently, granted, some are animated, so like they're obviously not working on sets and stuff like that in the same way. But yeah, 7 seems excessive. Finish the books. Um, and so yeah, and so that has been what I have been up to. Um, yeah. Um, Let us know, comment section, or in chat, live chat. We can talk about it over in the post show, what people have been up to. What have you enjoyed from this past week? But with that, let's jump into our topic of the show, which is the Daggerheart beta review. And so before we get into kind of our thoughts, I did want to give a very quick summary of what is Daggerheart, just for people that don't know, and my pages are not taking me where I wanted to go anymore. Pause for me to get to the right place. Okay. So this is from Daggerheart.com. Daggerheart is a fantasy tabletop role-playing game of brave heroics and vibrant worlds that are built together with your gaming group. Create a shared story with your adventuring party and shape your world through rich, long-term campaign play. That's kind of the blurb. And so before we jump into some of those specifics, Shanine, what is your experience with tabletop RPGs as a whole? And then also, high level, what is your experience with Daggerheart as a system?
I have been playing tabletop RPGs for several years. I don't know, 12 years or something like that, on and off. D&D, Pathfinder, GURPS,
Oops.
Genesis. I think those are the main ones that I have the most experience with. All as players. And I was thinking about this earlier, is that with Daggerheart, I volunteered to be the GM, and that was hard for me because I have never been the one to have to know all the rules before. I have largely been an RPG passenger princess where I am just there for the ride. I don't need to know how anything works or what's going on. Just tell me when to roll the shiny math rocks and what number I need to add to it. That's it. So, yes, it was interesting for me this time, having to be the one to know what we're rolling and why and how things are happening.
On my end, I started playing TTRPGs in high school. What I have since found out was 4th edition of D&D. From there, kind of fell out of it for a while. Didn't really play probably for about 10 years. Like, didn't really play through college, or even like by the time that I got to Connecticut, I was like interested in playing. Part of that, of course, was the success of Critical Role that was happening at that time. Uh, and started to get into some actual plays. That's when I started getting into board gaming as a hobby as well. And so those, of course, those communities are not quite circles, but there's a lot of overlap in that Venn diagram. Um, and never really got into it. Played a little bit at like conventions and stuff like that, but never got into anything serious. And then since coming to back to Texas, was in a longer term D&D campaign as a player. I've DM'd or GM'd Lancer, Marvel Multiverse, some D&D. I was running two separate D&D groups for a while. Now it's pretty much just one. I've run a handful of one-shots. I'm playing over in City on a Hill's Pathfinder game. And then when it came to Daggerheart as a whole, I did a learn to play where I like created a character and played, and then I did a the quick start adventure like 2 or 3 weekends ago for some people that I ran for a group, and it was all of their first time playing. So, um, so I like that we have again similar but different experience, and like getting to come at it. I'm so excited when I found out you were going to be GMing, just because I think it is something that like your natural storytelling skill. Like I was excited for you to bring that, and so I'm definitely excited to hear more about your campaign. That really I've kind of only heard like high level stuff too, and so, uh, but yeah, with all of that, so Daggerheart as a tabletop RPG is very similar to D&D. I kind of have in our notes like what is Daggerheart. So you have the same ideas of successes, and we'll get into some of like the specific differences and similarities. But like you have the idea of you're rolling your dice, your math rocks, based on the results of that roll. Outcomes happen within the narrative. You're creating characters, leveling up, doing all of those kinds of things. And you also have like the system of like your primary stats dictating like, oh, if you have a high agility, that means this, and stuff like that, similar to what people would be used to from a tabletop RPG system. Kind of with one of the main differences being that Daggerheart is very narrative focused versus being a very like crunchy system. And so we'll talk more about that in a little bit. But something that I'm curious about, what you have done for this in specific, as somebody that's kind of been running a campaign, and as we have, this is our review of the beta process. Daggerheart is not out. They have finished the beta. And through that, we got pretty much 5 major updates to the system over, I believe, like the last 6 to 8 months. And so we started with Daggerheart 1.0, and then the beta concluded with Daggerheart 1.5. And so now they're going to take that feedback. They iterated along the way, and then they will hopefully just be bringing whatever they can now into this final product of Daggerheart official release. And so with that, I do want to hear what did you do when it came to the updates? Like, were y'all like redoing characters? Like, were y'all like, how did y'all handle that process as the beta updated?
Yeah, we played off of updated material um every time we met for a session. I don't think we didn't usually have like too much. Luckily, all of the character stuff like updated on Demiplane
Okay.
itself usually. um so we didn't have to keep track of that too much. um Yeah.
Did you feel like there was like playing using Demiplane? Did you feel like there was any friction then of like people would like have not read fully like, oh wait, stuff's different now? Like, was there any like challenges or hiccups with that?
Uh, my crew is pretty good. Um, mostly experienced players. Um, one forever DM getting a break from that.
Love that for them.
Um, right? um, and yeah, all just super excited about playing. So it was never too bad. I just like throw in the chat like, "Hey, just so everyone knows, there has been an update. So make sure you check that before our session."
Mm-hmm. Um, with that, were people like picking different skills like as like there were updates like were people going back and being like, oh well, if this skill was this way, I would have picked this other card, or did that ever come up?
Yeah, I don't think they ever did switch anything. I know with this most recent update, one of my players was like, "Oh, so this spell they made so much worse."
Oh.
And I think he would have liked a different one. Um, we didn't talk about changing it, but
And then, since you have been running like a campaign, what level are your players?
they are still level 1.
Okay.
We haven't like covered that much ground. I think we just had our third session.
Okay.
So they have started bugging me about leveling up. But
Every time you ask, it's one more session. And so, um, okay, cool. I wasn't sure how far y'all had gotten, and so, um, and then for me, when I did the learn to play, there's a place here that like is a TTRPG shop basically, and so I played that there. I believe we played 1.0. It might have been 1.1. I just don't remember how quickly that update happened. And then I was going to get some people to play, and it ended up that would have been like 1.2, but that event didn't happen because people were busy. And so by the time that we actually got back together to run it, it was 1.5. So I kind of had experience with like both ends of the system, but did not play any or much of the middle. And so, but then with that, like we created characters, but like I haven't gone back to look at like what was different about my character, just because I haven't kept up with that. And then when we played for this last event, we actually played in paper and like actually had like all the printed out stuff for everybody. And so like that was really cool. That was kind of like, I didn't say like don't bring electronic devices, but I also didn't tell anyone to bring electronic devices on purpose, and just told them we would have character sheets. And so that of course made it a lot easier too, because we didn't have people worrying about leveling up or abilities or any of that. It was just, oh, this is what my character has. And so that kind of made it a little bit straightforward there. Yeah. I don't think there's anything else beta process wise. I will say I did have a complaint from when I played that had been adjusted by the time we did 1.5. And so I did the survey, I submitted the thing, I filled in. Am I the reason it got changed? Definitely not. But it felt really good to have like a piece of feedback that like literally changed the system, which is like what you want to see about a beta process. And so I really liked that. I think that was a very cool part of getting to like experience both ends of the system. Is getting to actually see what are the results of the feedback, even again, kind of high level. And so, but yeah, let's get into some of the differences between Daggerheart and other TTRPGs, specifically D&D, since D&D is like the elephant in the room. But a lot of these are going to apply versus other systems. And so if you want to compare and contrast against other systems you've played as, because like I haven't played GURPS, and so like if there's anything you want to call out there, please feel free to jump in with that. And so high level, our first two differences are probably the biggest differences in the system when it comes to your regular play. And that's difference in how you use dice. So, like if you think of tabletop RPGs as like a family tree, like there's basically two different ones. There's the D&D family tree, and then there's the like powered by the apocalypse D6 systems and so you got your D20s versus your D6s. And then Daggerheart kind of hits the middle of those as a 2d12 system. And so as a player, you never roll a d20, at least as far as I'm aware. You have 2d12s that are different colors. One represents hope, one represents fear. And then based on how you roll, if your hope die is higher, then you get hope, which is a resource that you as players use. Or if you roll fear, the GM gets fear, which is a resource they can use for cool effects and stuff like that. And so, what did you think about this differences in the dice, and then the hope and fear system as a whole?
Like it. It reminded me a lot of Genesis. You can also like succeed and or succeed but or fail and or fail but I just think it's a fun way to get a little more storytelling out of your dice rolls than just like it works or it didn't. Like it worked really well, it worked but something still went wrong, stuff like that. Like it just, yeah, I think it's fun.
Yeah. I will say it felt really bad to roll a 23 with fear. Of like, this is almost the highest roll I can roll, and it's a succeed but. Like, that was definitely like, of course, not like a high odds chance of that happening, but like that one did sting a little bit. And but yeah, kind of echoing what you say. I come at those same ideas from Candela Obscura, which is also by Darrington Press. And so in that one, it has the idea of like 1 to 3 is a failure, 4 and 5 is the success, and then 6 is a complete success. And so I really like this again from a storytelling perspective. Kind of just again echoing what you said there. I could definitely see it weighing on people though if they were consistently rolling with fear. So like we had one of our encounters in the quick start where one of my players rolled with fear 3 times in a row. And so like that kind of got rough. Just in terms of like it's like, oh, but like I want to do something, but like the gambler's paradox of like I just keep rolling with fear, and like it kind of leads to interesting storytelling there of like and I think this would be more interesting in like your situation where you have this like longer term campaign of like, does one person become the like rolled with fear person of like super stressful like situation, who rolls, not this person because they will roll with fear. And so in chat, Chunk says the dice work similarly to Powered by the Apocalypse, as a call out there. And so I think that's really interesting. That's really fun. I didn't get to experience that side of it just because we didn't do like multiple sessions, but I think that could be interesting. And then what else did I want to say? I had something else. We'll kind of get a little bit more into this later, but one of the other differences here is how criticals work for players. So players critical when they roll doubles. So it doesn't matter the number. If you roll doubles, that's a critical. And so compared to D&D, where you're getting a critical when you roll a 20, so a 1 out of 20% chance. In this, you're critically 1 out of 12 because it just does to your dice match. And so, and then I don't know if this affected you since you've been the GM for it, and GMs do still roll d20s. But as a player, I felt like I had to rewire my brain for what numbers were good. Because like you can't roll a 1 because if you roll 2 ones, it's a critical. So like 3 is your lowest roll. And then like with a d20, 10 is your average. 10.5, whatever. But with 2d12, like 12 is your average, kind of. But like the doubles system like really throws off the spectrum. And so like it definitely is like a weird thing to wrap your brain around. Because it's not just high number goes burr. And I kind of liked that. I think that that's like a fun way of handling it. We'll talk a little bit, like I said, a little bit more about criticals later on in a future question. We'll save those. But yeah, I think that that's really cool. Did your players have any thoughts with that? With dealing with like the different criticals or different like rolling situations?
No, I think they were okay with it overall. I think the dice rolling itself, they were like fine with. The what you did with the hope and fear was sometimes a bit more confusing, or like not as beneficial as they wanted it to be.
Yeah, that was a piece of feedback one of my players had, of like he felt like he just had nothing to use his hope on. And like I think we might have talked about this in post show after book club. I don't remember exactly if it was off air. But like every class has like a 3 hope ability, and he was just like, mine just kind of sucks. Like, and then like none of his actual other abilities really needed hope, and so he just kind of was sitting on hope the whole time. And so I don't know if that just happens to be the way that the character was pre-genned, but like that's definitely something that like I think going back and playing more, like thinking of that resource flow is definitely something to keep in mind as you're building your character. Unless you play like me, and I had an experience similar to that player where I just rolled with fear a bunch, and I felt like I was like playing the whole session at like one hope. And so, but like to each their own, I guess. And so next difference I want to talk about is some of the differences in the character sheet, and the way that things work there. So first off, there are like abilities. So like the idea of agility and strength and things like that. But there are no actual skills. So like if you're used to like D&D or Pathfinder, where you have like your perception, your athletics, your acrobatics, none of those exist in this system. They are just all rolled into the main abilities. So it's like, does that sound like an acrobatic thing? Cool, use your agility. What did you think of that difference?
I like it. I like that as a player, it's less to keep track of. And like for a GM too, like there's really like 6 roles that are going to be going on. Yeah.
I'm completely in agreement. And so the abilities are agility, strength, finesse, instinct, presence, and knowledge. With instinct being your like perception, your ability to sense what's going on around you, and then presence is your like charisma, basically. Um, and so the rest of those, I feel like the words kind of make more sense, but those are the two that are kind of more different. And so I like this as a system as well. It is really cool that your characters like. I like this in Pathfinder, where it's not just do you have proficiency, yes, no. It's are you trained in it? Are you an expert in it? Are you a master in it? And those like power up abilities based on that. But that really means you're looking in so many different places for what you're trying to do. And I kind of like this streamlined of I want to pick this lock. Cool. That's finesse. Here we go. Um, and then also with that, like you don't have an ability and a modifier for those stats. So like in D&D, if you have an 11 in strength, like that affects your modifier. But but then like or sorry, if you have an 11 in strength, it doesn't affect your modifier, but if you have a 12 in strength, it does. And so you have to like keep those in mind. Whereas in Daggerheart, it's just what is your plus or minus in this stat. And so I like that a lot. I really don't like this system of like this stat gets you this other modifier, but that modifier is what matters, not the stat itself. So I really like that as like a streamlining mechanic. Um, and then something else that's different is there's this like card system that is baked into the game. And this is like what controls or what tells you what abilities you have, both from your like community and ancestry, but also from your like actual abilities. Um, I don't know if you will have been able to get too much into this since y'all are still level 1. I know I don't have a lot of experience with it, but there is this idea that like you can have like a hand of cards, and I don't know the number. If you know off the top of your head, feel free to let me know. But like you can have like 5 cards in your hand, but like after you get to a certain level, you can then get more cards, but you can still only have 5 in your hand. And so then you can like pay stress to like swap out the cards you need. So like that's really cool. I think I haven't played with that, but like, and again, I don't know the exact number. It might not be 5, but like, I think that that's a cool mechanic. You of course don't actually have to use cards for that, especially if you're not playing physically. It can just be what abilities do you have you learned. But what did you think about those abilities and stuff like that?
Um, yeah, like we didn't get to play with any of that more advanced level stuff, but I think it will be really cool because I think like one thing that has kept me from playing more like spellcasters in D&D and stuff is just like the idea of
Mm-hmm.
having to prep spells.
Yeah.
Like I don't know, it's hard and stressful and I don't want to do it. But with this just being able to be like, "Oh, I need that thing. I'll just spend a stress and then get that thing that I need that I know that I know."
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
like that idea. Um And yeah, I think the card thing is also interesting in that it encourages people to be choosing unique abilities and stuff. Not that you are not allowed to choose the same thing as someone else, but especially if you're playing with like the physical cards, it's like someone else is holding that one, so just like pick something else.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think that would be a really interesting way of like doing a campaign at higher levels. Is like you can both know this ability, but only one of you can have access to it at a time. I think that would be a really fun of like let me check my notes or check the pages. There's an ability that I really liked when I played. That I think it's called Rain of Blades, which is an ability that I think like the wizard and the rogue can both get access to. And it's what it sounds like. You throw out a rain of blades and hit a whole bunch of stuff that's near you, and so it's like really cool. Uh, But like that's definitely like the type of ability that like seems like it would make a lot of sense on a whole bunch of characters. Um, and so I like this idea of like, well, you can't all have this ability. You got to choose who knows it, or choose who's going to care, like use this for battle or something like that. I think that'd be an interesting way to play it. Um, and then kind of going more into what you were saying, I like that every character felt like they have the same amount of stuff going on. Um, like if you're a spellcaster, you don't have 50 spells. And if you're a fighter, you don't have 2 actions. It's just everyone has at level 1 their 2 cards and then their class abilities. And that's what you have. And like some of them may be more generally useful than others or things like that. Like when I did my character, I played the rogue, and so I took a card that gave me essentially advantage on picking locks. Then we encountered nothing that was locked. So you kind of have that, and that's just part of the quick shot for how it worked out for us. But I thought that was really interesting, and that's like a fun way to like play it out. And again, it just makes it so like again, I had people over. Some of them were pretty experienced. One of them had only ever played D&D, and so like I think like the way that we did it is like we came over, we did like the learn to like walked through the rules and how stuff works, and then we had lunch, and then we came back and played. I say came back, we were just in the other room, but like we came and played. And so like I do think that was something that was like helpful for them coming in as like a newer to TTRPGs person that played the mage, is it wasn't like I can't imagine handing somebody like, oh, you're new, here's a sorcerer, figure it out. Like obviously some people will really love that and they'll really gravitate to that and want to put in the extra effort, but like there's so much more to that versus handing somebody like the rogue, a fighter, a barbarian, those like martial classes. And so while I do not know remotely enough to claim like balance in like a game design standpoint, I like that the classes felt balanced, just in terms of abilities and what they could do. One of the other major differences on the character sheet is this idea of evasion, armor, HP, and stress as kind of your core like combat stats, versus in other tabletop RPGs where you really just have an armor class. And so evasion is your ability to dodge. So if you're a rogue, you might have a really high evasion, versus if you're the tank, you have a low evasion. And then there's armor. So when you take a hit, armor can reduce the damage of that hit. So if you're the tank, you might have that low evasion, but have a high armor. So you can shrug off more damage at the expense of taking more wear and tear on your armor. So you might get hit often, but not for as much if you want to do that. And then the way that like damage works is you have damage thresholds. So if, which I feel like is one of the intricacies here. So every character has a minor threshold, a major threshold, and a severe threshold.
They don't have minor thresholds anymore.
Oh yeah. The minor is basically just anything that's below major. Yeah. Yeah, you're right. It used to be that you actually had a number at the minor. Now it's just kind of like, to go off like the character sheet, minor is just like the bottom area. And so the idea is there is like, I could as a GM, could hit a player for 50 damage, but that's just severe. It's the same as hitting them for that lower limit of what a severe hit is. And then like the way that it works, if it's minor, it's 1 HP, major is 2 HP damage, and severe is 3 HP. And so like your character, this is another thing that was weird. It's like you have 3 health as this character, but like that doesn't mean you can only take 3 damage or something like that. And then finally you have stress. Some abilities use stress. I think they tend to be more spell-like abilities, tend to use stress. And then there are ways of causing stress to your opponents. And then at any time, if your stress fills up, if you start taking HP damage instead of stress damage. And so, what do you think of those four stats and how that all works together?
I think this was one of the things that felt a little convoluted for us. There's just like so many things, and like damage and HP are like not on the same scales, and like I don't know if it's just that it was different from D&D and was like a weird learning curve for that thing. But yeah, I don't know. I'm still like kind of undecided on that whole thing. I know one of the things that my group really liked was getting um, rid of the minor thresholds, because I think in our first encounter, maybe our first and second encounter, still, minor thresholds still existed. So, like, they were hitting a thing, but then we're doing no damage to it.
Mm-hmm.
And that was wildly discouraging.
Yeah.
In combat. Um, so yeah, I think they have improved it since then, but I still am not 100% sure.
Yeah. Similar. I have similar thoughts there. Like, this is a crunchy system for a not very crunchy game. Of like, and I think it's a very interesting system, but like having these four stats that kind of mix, but also don't necessarily mix, and then like as you level up, you can increase that like major threshold, so it takes a higher hit to get you that 2 HP damage and stuff like that. There's a lot to that, and I think that that's really interesting, but it definitely is probably the part of the system that is the most clunky. And I don't necessarily mean clunky in a bad way, just clunky in a different way. Like, I'll equate this to the same thing as like in Pathfinder 2e, the idea that like you have critical failures, successes, and critical successes. And the idea there is it's like your critical is just rolling 10 higher than whatever the target is. So if someone has an AC of 15 and you hit them for 25, that's a critical. And so like that's clunkier than if you roll a 20, it's a crit. And I don't necessarily, but I like that system. I like that there's more width and breadth to that system, but it is more to understand and parse. And that's kind of the same way I feel about this. I like it. It's interesting, but there's a lot there. Especially because everyone is going to have those different stats and stuff like that. So like you can definitely have that weirdness of like, okay, well, use your armor. It's like, okay, but my armor only reduces the damage by 3, which isn't enough. So now I have to burn 2 armor. But if this other character, they would just have to burn 1. And again, I don't necessarily think that's a problem, but it is clunky. IMO. And so, let's see. Last are 2 character differences. Every character gets their subclass at level 1. Amen. Let's go. Pathfinder does this. Like, there's a reason that people in D&D joke that like you should start D&D at level 3 so that you can actually have every character have their subclass. I don't understand why that's not the case in D&D and isn't going to be a thing in D&D 2024. Like, but I love that you get subclasses at level 1 as a player. your subclass is part of your backstory. I assume. Again, I played one shots, but like, um, did your players have any feedback on subclasses?
Uh, Not that I can remember. They all were like just gung ho to create their own characters,
Mm-hmm.
and they went ahead and did it. So we didn't discuss that too much.
Um,
But I like it. I like that you get like a little bit of a different flavor for each class. I created a character just for fun, just to
mm-hmm.
see like how it all went, and I created a little mushroom bard, and she's a librarian. Um,
Nerd.
but yeah, I think yeah, it's just fun having a little bit of different flavor.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I like that it could give the idea of like what class are you, and instead of saying rogue, you could say nightwalker. Like that just feels like it could be so much more of like your vibe with how you build your character. I think that that's super cool. Um, I should also say with classes, every class has two domains. I meant to mention this when we were talking ability cards. So the rogues domains are midnight and grace. Um, and I want to say the way that it works out is every domain is shared by two classes. And so that's really cool. So that means that like where you overlap, you can have the same like similar abilities, but no two classes directly overlap with each other. And so you can like lay them out in a circle, and that's really cool. I like that a lot. Um, and then last thing I had character sheet wise is that you have this idea of community and ancestry as opposed to race or species and background. Um, what do you think of this system?
I love it. I encountered like the idea of ancestry while playing my brief appearance on City on a Hill Gaming when we were doing the level up system, I think it was.
Mm-hmm.
And it's such a better system for character creation and backstory. Like, not every dwarf is going to be from the same little mountain
Mm-hmm.
community. Like, it gives a chance for creating so much more diverse characters in this world.
Speaking of diverse, we didn't. I don't have this in notes because it's weird to kind of call this out. There's a lot of very different classes or different ancestries. I mean, in this. So like I built a monkey who was very like a monkey rogue who was very obviously based off of Abu. And like there's fawns, there's ribbits, there's all kinds of different ancestries that I think is really fun. And I like the idea that like your ancestry does give you some sort of abilities, but it doesn't define you. Like this kind of goes to what you just said. Just because you're a dwarf, that doesn't mean you're from Dwarftown. And so you have that community side. So like the example here from the pre-made characters is like there's this ribbit, so they're a frog person, but they're from the Underborn, and because they're from Underborn, they're used to low light living. So like that gives them different stats because they're used to that type of situation. It doesn't matter that they're not an elf. Like they're from Underborn, they have access to this ability. And I think that that's really cool. It would give you fun ways, I would assume, in a campaign setting of like, oh, these two people are from the Underborn, but okay, cool, but y'all don't know each other. You're from different cities within this geographic area, and so like you might have similar situations, but not the same experience. And so I think that that's really cool. Um, I don't know if I've ever said this on content, but I hate the background system in D&D. I think it's so bad. I like that they're changing it for D&D 2024. I think there's some interesting changes there, but like it just feels so like it's not a background 90% of the time, it's a profession. Like my background is sailor. Like it's not really where you're from though. Like that's your resume. like and so I like this idea of like your community like being part of what shapes you, not just what were you doing for a living before you chose to start adventuring. And so and then this last thing I have written down as a major difference, and this is something that I'm very excited to hear what you think on, is that broadly speaking within the system, there's a bigger emphasis on storytelling. And one of the ways that that manifests is there's no initiative in combat. And players go when somebody rolls a fear, the GM can jump in, or they can cash in fear to take turns. And then I had something else I wanted to say about that before I passed it over to you, and now I don't remember what it was. So we'll just say, what did you think about this, like, I'll say more intentional emphasis on storytelling when compared to like D&D and Pathfinder?
I love it because that is what I am playing RPGs for, is the storytelling. And luckily I've had a really good, like the perfect Daggerheart group for playing Daggerheart. Is all of them across the board were way more interested in role play and social encounters than being number crunchy and doing combat. So that has been a lot of fun. Like, I think last session we rolled dice maybe like 5 times. Like, not a whole lot was happening, but we are just like having a good time. Mm-hmm. And yeah, I think combat though has been one of the things that was hard for us to figure out. Just again being, I think this is a thing that is so wildly different from D&D and what we are all used to, that it was a huge learning curve. And like having no initiative, just like using the action tracker and being able to go like whenever people were like, can I go now? Is it my turn? Can I go? And it was like just weird to figure out. Yeah, harder to find like a rhythm for combat, but interesting. Mm-hmm. I don't know.
Yeah. This kind of goes to what I was saying with the card system of like, I like this idea, but I haven't gotten to experience it since we've only played like the one shots. But like, I like the idea of this ability is better when X has happened. Okay. Who has access to do X? Cool. So I know if they do that, that's when I want to make sure I can jump in and use my ability. Versus just being like, oh, they did this thing. Okay, well now I got to wait till my turn. Is that going to throw off the groove? Are we going to forget? And so I like that idea of like, it feels like you're comboing with the other characters in like a really fun way. And like, yes, you're still just rolling and using your abilities, but like narratively, I like that makes it feel like we are a team of adventurers working together. And I think that that's very fun. Like there's an ability that like if the enemy is vulnerable, it deals more damage. And so like it's cool. It's like, okay, well, who can do vulnerable? Who can do all of these things? I think that that's really interesting and is a fun way to do stuff. And then I remembered my other thing. Another way that the storytelling manifests, and they say you can still play with like a grid, but they actually give like measurements in terms of like it's melee, very close, close, far, very far. With the idea of like if you're playing with minis, like close is the length of, or very close is the length of a playing card, like the short side of a playing card. Close is the length of a pencil. Far is the length of a piece of paper. And just these ideas that like if you don't want to use a grid but still want to use minis, here's how to make this work for your system. And so like when we played, we like didn't use battle maps. We just played on the table and like walked them through what these differences meant, gave everyone a pencil and a card, and they had a piece of paper from their character sheet, and we just played. And I think that that makes it like so cool from like a narrative system that you're not min maxing your movement speed. It's not like, oh well, I only have 25 feet of movement. It's like, no, you can move close and like don't worry about it. If you want to move far, we'll have you do a roll. I really liked that. I think that that's again some fun narrative because it just removes one more thing to worry about from the system. And I think that that's really fun. I know in their videos, one of the things that Darrington Press recommends is like building a map together as you start the campaign. Did y'all do that?
Yeah.
What was that experience? Because I haven't gotten to do that, but it looks really cool. So like, what was your experience with that?
It was really fun. I picked one of like the pre-drawn maps that they supply, and then we just like passed it around the page being like, oh, my character's from here, it's called blah blah blah, and like putting different places on like that. And then they also got to point out some other places on the map that they're like, I'm interested to go here and see what's over in this place. This is a place that I haven't been but is connected to my story, and stuff like that. So that was really fun. um, I liked it as a GM, like having a more collaborative world building where it's not like all on me to design the world, um, but that we like do it together. And then also they have like created hooks for me as well that I'm like, cool, we can go see these places and figure out what's there at some point.
Yeah, I'm so interested in that. We'll probably come back to the idea of this in a future question, but like I think that that's a really fun idea of just like you narratively should be doing backstories. You should be incorporating player backstories into your stories. And like that doesn't mean that like every encounter should be about someone's backstory, but like you should be like pulling these things in, and having them be a part of what's going on. And that responsibility is also on the players. Like you should want to make your backstory matter. Of like, and so like I've had this experience with my Strixhaven game, of like one of the things that I told them is like, hey, for year one, we're not necessarily going to spend too much time with y'all's backstories as y'all are like getting to know the session or the setting. But now that we're in year two, like I've hit everybody up and I've been like, hey, what do you want to make sure that we hit from your backstory? What are your major things? Now that we've played for like over a year in real time as well, like is there anything you want to polish on your story? And like without going into too many spoilers, I have a character that's like making a major change to their character in our next session. And I'm really excited about it. It's like gonna be super cool. It's any time that you can force collaborative storytelling on people, that's when tabletop RPGs shine. And I love this as an idea, for people going into it. Again, haven't experienced it. I'm glad you had fun. And so that was what I was hoping you were saying. I was going to be really crushed if you were like, Cameron, it sucked. Never do this.
No, it was fantastic. And bonus, one of my players loves making maps. So we have a very pretty map now with all of our like place names and stuff added onto it.
Nice. That's really cool. I'm jealous. I'm sure there's more differences and stuff like that with the system. That's kind of our high levels. Anything else though that you wanted to call out? Um, Kind of things that are differences between this system and other systems before we move
Um,
on.
One thing that we didn't mention yet was experiences,
Mm.
where each player gets to choose like two things that their character has specific experience in that they're really good at and get to add bonuses to on rolls. I think if they spend hope to
Mm-hmm.
apply it, which I like. I like that you can choose like a very specific experience to your character, and it's not just like from a list of like, oh, you're good at
Yeah,
horseback riding.
yeah, and I know like the intention is that you're supposed to kind of make them vague. So like your your experience shouldn't be I'm good at fighting, but it should be like disciplined. Like when in a stressful situation, my character excels because they have practiced. And I really like that idea. So like with the pre-gen rogue, their experiences are they don't see me coming and strike a deal. So it's like this character is good at negotiating and good at being sneaky. But it's not just called stealth or persuasion. like, and then as you said, you have to use hope to actually activate this. And so, yeah, these are a fun idea. And I think when you level up, you can get a new experience. I don't know if that's specific level up thresholds, but you can get new experiences. Um, oh, and then speaking of which, also haven't had any experience with this on either of our ends. But the way that leveling up works is there's level up groups. So like levels 2 through 4 are a group. Then I think 5 through 7 are a group. Then 8 through 10 are a group. And when you level up, you can select specific upgrades from that group, in addition to like getting a new ability and stuff like that. And so this is also a difference. Like after you start hitting level 2, your rogue is no longer going to be like every other rogue in terms of stats, because you're going to now choose how do you make your character unique compared to other characters. And I want to say there's like you can't get everything. I want to say you get 2 or 3 things when you level up, and there's like 15 to 20 options. And so I'm excited for once y'all hit level up to level 2. I'm excited to hear your take on that. Again, this is just something that like I've seen on the sheets, but it seems very cool. So with that, I want to hear high level. What is your favorite part of the system? And then this can be the exact same answer, but this is our question from Sneaky that he posted in our Discord. Um, what is something that is done so well in this that you want to bring it into other games? And so again, those can be the same thing or they could be different.
Um, yes, I think mine will be the same thing, and it's just the overall emphasis on role playing and collaborative storytelling. I love that that's like baked right into the rules, that like the GM and the players like have this back and forth about what happens, and um yeah, that it's a framework to tell
Mm-hmm.
a good story.
Um, so mine are different. Um, so favorite part, I love how streamlined the character sheets are. Again, kind of with the exception of those like combat stats. Um, I love how streamlined the character sheets are. Again, I love that you can hand somebody the mage and them not be overwhelmed. I really think that that's a huge benefit to this system, and I think that that's really helpful. Um, and it makes it like learning this if you wanted to play this at a con way easier because you're not reading 50 spells, stuff like that. And so That's definitely my favorite part. Hard to port that over to another system, so that's why mine are going to be different. The thing that I like to bring over to another system is something that I like so much I forgot it came from Daggerheart, because I implemented this after they had like talked about it, and that's the way that criticals work. And so that the way that like when you get a critical in combat, the way that your damage works is you take whatever the max damage is, then you roll your dice and add those together. So if your damage is 2d8, your max is 16, and then you roll your 2d8 and add whatever you roll to that. I love that as a mechanic. Again, so much that I implemented this in my D&D game and forgot where it came from. And so when I had a character critical in the session that I was running, I had to look up the rules, and I was reminded, oh yeah, this is where that house rule came from. And so I love that as a system. There's nothing worse than rolling or hitting a crit and then rolling minimum damage. Like, oh, cool, I doubled my 2 to a 4. Awesome. Like that just feels so bad. It goes back to what you said about like when there was a lower limit on the minor threshold. I was like, oh, cool, I hit them. I did 3 damage, but their minor threshold is 4, so they took 0 or took a stress or whatever. Like that sucks. And I like that this is the damage equivalent of that. If you get a critical, it is really cool. You deal damage. And so, and then I haven't started a new campaign, so this is not going to matter. I'm doing the map thing. When like for every campaign that I start going forward, even if it's as simple as here's the town in your backstory, where do you think it's located on the map? Even if it's just that simple. It is just such a good way of getting things started. And I think it adds so much of like, okay, your town's over there, but we're over here. What was that journey like? And like actually seeing that on the map of like, you traveled 3 weeks to get here. What was that 3 weeks like? Like, I think that just adds so much when you have to physically look at it on a map. And so, and then, okay. Inverse, of course, this is the open beta, so we're gonna do our least favorite part or parts, but we're like frame this, of course, in what needs work. Like, what is something that you want them to take to the drawing board that you would hope that will be a little different when it comes to full release?
For me, I want to see improvements just with the combat. Yeah, I said a lot about that before. I think the main problem with it is that combat just felt slow for us. And yeah, I'd like to see, with it being like so roleplay focused, I'd love to see more dynamic combat.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Again, kind of to no surprise, we're pretty aligned on that. For me, like, Daggerheart's in like a weird place between like it's not D&D or Pathfinder, like these very crunchy systems, but it's also not like as narrative as something like Blades in the Dark or Candela. Where like when I played Candela, one of the weird things for me to get my head around is like, oh, I can just walk over there in combat. Like, it's like there's just I want to go there. Okay, GM, I want to go there. What do I need to roll? Like, how does that work? And this is kind of like in that middle ground. And I think with combat in specific, and perhaps this is because we've both, like I've every time I've played, it's been like new players, and y'all are still like relatively early on. I would specifically like more tools to help new parties with getting used to that system. I know they introduced some stuff in some of the updates that it's like, hey, if you want to do initiative, you can do that. Here's this other way of like everyone has 3 tokens, and like you can use your 3 tokens Like every time you take a turn, you turn in your token. And then once everyone's out, everyone gets their tokens back. And so like, I think those systems would be helpful for people, but like with there not being initiative, some players are going to just not jump in. Like if you get people that are not like assertive, it's going to be harder for them to jump in. Like my players kind of just did initiative. Like they just kind of did like, we'll rotate through the four of us unless like something big happens and someone needs to jump in at a different time. Like they just kind of did initiative. And so I would like, again, as you're learning the system as players, I would like some more like handholdy options that don't feel like we're punishing the power gamer because they keep taking every turn. Like, and so I don't know what that would be. I'm not a game designer, but like that's definitely something that I would like to see. Let's see. Final thoughts, Shanine. Overview, Daggerheart beta. Final thoughts.
I think there are a lot of great things about Daggerheart. It has led to some super fun sessions, and just like great times of playing RPGs. And I'm excited to see what the final Daggerheart looks like.
Yeah, I really like this system. I'm hoping to either start an in-person game of Marvel Multiverse or an in-person game of Daggerheart soon. It'll probably be Marvel Multiverse because that's out. But like once we actually get Daggerheart, I'm like the full release, I'm really interested to get a consistent group and start playing. I'm very interested in this system, both as a GM and as a player. And so I'm really interested to kind of see what this is going to look like once we get full release. And there's so many really cool ideas. I think it's very clear how much they care about the system doing well for Cough Cough Season 4, Cough Cough. And I'm very like interested for how this dynamic is going to work and how it's going to work in groups that are not as great of storytellers as like even not saying like as Critical Role, since they're like, you know, a bunch of voice actors and actors, but like just in groups that aren't as good of storytellers, period. Like, what does this actually look like if you have players that just like, that's just not how they're coming at it. What's the system going to provide for them? And so I'm definitely curious about that. And I'm really excited to see a lot more groups tackle this system. And I'm also always excited for more major systems to be in play. And like, I like Candela a lot, but there sure is a reason that a bunch of the major TTRPG systems are fantasy. Like, there's just something about that draws people to it. And so I'm excited for this world, for this setting. I'm excited for them to give source books and whatever those are going to look like. And like, I'm excited that like again, we don't know that season 4 of Critical Role is going to be Daggerheart, but I think you're pretty bananas if you think they're going to put out this system and then not use it for season 4. But like, I really like the idea that after season 4, source book of their campaign, and it's all playable in Daggerheart. Like, I think that's so cool that like we could be getting that side of things. And like, oh, so what are the new classes? Well, it's the one that they were playtesting during the show. Like, that's so cool. I'm really interested to like what that like level of creative control could look like, as we have the people that like them running it, but then also what does that look like as you roll that out into other narratives? So super excited. super interested in all of that. Um, those were a lot of final thoughts. I did not mean to final that many thoughts, but here we are. Um, it is what it is. And so, um, with that, Shanine, love chatting tabletop RPGs with you. I'm very excited to hear more about your campaign as it goes and for us to chat more and more about it. I should say, um, hopefully soon, potentially next week, we'll be doing our book club tier list. It's been a hot minute since we've done that, and we've referenced it several times. But finally taking a look at all of the books that we've done. I think we're at like 11 or 12 books and adding those to our tier list. So very excited for that. And then, excited kind of what we're going to get up to for the rest of the podcasts this month. With book club, I do want to call out, I have not updated the show notes. We're going to be doing end of the month chapters 36 through 70 of Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell by Susanna Clark. And so part 1 of that book club is already live on our YouTube, so go check that out. I'll do the hand thing and hopefully remember to go and find this and add a link to it after I trim the beginning off. So highly recommend that. Go check that out. Hear our thoughts on the only time we've done a book club on half of a book. And so, but with that, as we do probably a very brief post-show chat, we are One Geek 411. You find us around social media. Join that Discord server. Shoot us an email at 1stgeek411@gmail.com. Check out the Redbubble store. Watch live on Twitch and YouTube. And then, of course, you can find those VODs over on YouTube. And then you can find us at our personal social media, minus Humar Whittle.
I'm Hoot and Hell Tales, Tales.
And it's been a great week.
Read a book.
Roll some dice.